The same general strike sparked in Minneapolis after the killing of Renee Good and Alex Pretti is happening nationwide today. People recognize it's not just about marching in the street and waving your signs, it's about genuine economic disruption and using collective organizing to show people in positions of power our demands are serious. No work, no school, no shopping. All three of those demonstrates to those that control the economy that the people that actually make that momentum happen are not going to put up with it anymore. If there will be terrorists on our street, kidnapping neighbors and killing civilians, we will not participate in the economy that people in positions of power need to function. This article from Business Insider says no work, no school, no shopping. A general strike to protest ICE is attempting to go national. Last Friday, Minnesota business Cats and Coffee wasn't open for purchases, but it did invite customers in to hang out with cats and find community as part of a statewide economic blackout to protest ramped up ICE actions. This Friday, the general strike is going nationwide. At least that's the aim of activist groups, unions, and some celebrities who have called for no work, school, or shopping after fatal shootings by immigration officers in recent weeks in Minnesota. In a post promoting a national shutdown, actor Hannah Einbinder wrote on Instagram, withholding our labor and capital is the most effective leverage. National general strike, spread the word. Actor Pedro Pascal shared a graphic of Alex Pretti and Renee Good, the two Minnesotans shot by federal agents, that said Pretti good reason for a national strike, and posted in support of a larger strike on the 30th. It's unclear how widespread participation in the blackout will be or what impact it may have on ICE operations. A website for the national shutdown lists hundreds of organizations as endorsers. Last week's march brought out tens of thousands of people. Let's make this Friday even bigger. The University of Minnesota Graduate Labor Union wrote in an Instagram post. This is that National Shutdown org website. This shows a lot of the participating endorsers. As you can see, we have the Association of University of Minnesota, Black Student Union, University of Minnesota, 5051, novel protest movement that has sparked most of these No King protests. Engaged Defenders for Democracy, LA Tenants Union, Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance. There's so many different organizations and labor unions that are signing on to this as endorsement. This is a map of all of the protests that are happening today. I will be at the one here in Los Angeles interviewing people and talking to them about why it's important that they're coming out, why they're not going to work, what they're risking with doing a general strike, and how they plan to demand change from the Trump administration. All of this across the country was sowed by the momentum built in Minnesota with their general strike. There's a lot of risks that come with general strikes. Sometimes people are fired from their job. Some people work paycheck to paycheck, and this could really impact their own financial flexibility. There's a lot of instability that comes with this, but that is where community comes into play. Mutual aid groups, like we saw in Minnesota, continued business cooperation, businesses who will open people in, like Kaz and Coffee in Minnesota. We know that this is possible. The question is whether or not it will happen. We know that some communities are more tight knit, more organized than others, but we need to see coordination at the business level, the social level, and even local and state officials when it comes to making sure that these demonstrations are successful.
I'm here in the streets of Minneapolis with tens of thousands of people who have all gathered together in negative 8-degree weather for one simple reason. They will no longer tolerate federal agents who come masked without badge numbers into their communities, ripping people from their homes. ICE was never made as a security measure for the United States. This was established in 2003 in the wake of the most paranoid era in U.S. history after 9/11. This was never meant to protect people. It was always meant to establish the full power of the state and the federal government against those that it deems as political dissidents. We will not stand for it any longer. Minnesota's gathered together. This is a blueprint for what the rest of the country should look like, with collective labor and understanding that organizing and solidarity is the only way to bring about change. Fuck ICE, abolish the agency, protect the people.
That video was taken last weekend when I was in Minnesota, where most of this momentum started to be sowed. And now we're seeing that across the country. People are recognizing that economic strikes are the only way to hit power where it hurts the most, which is their wallets. If we want genuine change, if we want to see policy reform, if we want to see drastic action like the abolition of ICE, we can't do that unless all of us stand up. Individually, the president is going to be able to do whatever he wants. No one person can stop that. But when we mobilize in the street with our fellow workers, with fellow students, and people who just participate in the economy in general, we can demand that change. They don't have power without us. They don't have profits without us. Our ability to keep the economy moving and work in the industries that require human labor are the only ways that they are able to make as much as they do. We can stop that, but we need to do that together. And that doesn't come without risks. People lose their jobs, people go through financial insecurity, a lot of people work paycheck to paycheck. But the only way that we're going to be able to support each other as we demand for change are things like mutual aid groups, community organizing, making sure that we look after each other if our institutions don't. This is not an immigration abstract policy debate. This is a human rights issue. People are being tortured in these detention centers across the country. Legal residents are being stripped of their permanent residency and sent to countries sometimes they haven't even stepped foot in. And citizens are getting shot and killed in the street. Everybody recognizes this moment and how important it is to come together. And we need to see more general action that's taken across the country that lasts longer than a day. Influential figureheads are also taking this conversation into the realm of culture. It's no longer an abstract policy debate. People are talking about this in everyday life. Bruce Springsteen just released the song Streets of Minneapolis that explicitly explains what the plight of those demonstrating on the ground have been in the past couple of weeks in Minneapolis. And this shows that Minnesota is inspiring people. It really is the breeding ground of a lot of this necessary change. And hopefully, it is the blueprint of what the rest of the country should look like moving forward. We know that these economic disruptions have real world results. There are talks about impeachment for Kristi Noem. Two sitting Republican senators said that she is incompetent and terrible at her job. And Senator Susan Collins has said that Homeland Security ended enhanced ICE operations in Maine. The Republican senator said she had several direct conversations with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem since the agency launched its operation over a week ago, which comes after she received no information from the agency at the start of its heightened presence. While not saying when the operation ended, Collins said in a statement, there are currently no ongoing or planned large scale ICE operations here. It's unclear how U.S. immigration and customs enforcement activity will look moving forward. DHS did not confirm an end to its operation, instead, saying in a statement that the agency will continue to enforce the law across the country as we do every day. Similarly, Governor Janet Mills said that the reported end does not end the pain and suffering that they have inflicted on communities across our state, people who have been terrorized, mothers who have been separated from their children, businesses who have been threatened, all by their own government. Maine's Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project is seeing a drop in new requests for emergency legal help from people detained by ICE after responding to over 60 in the past week. The need for legal assistance remains for those that were swept up in the operation, mostly asylum seekers without criminal records, Executive Director Sue Roque said. Since the shooting of ICU nurse Alex Pretti on Saturday, the second person killed and third shot by federal agents in Minneapolis this month, calls to defund the agency have increased. Mills called on Congress to bring Noem before them for a hearing to cut off further funding for ICE until their lawless tactics and dangerous behavior cease. That's bad messaging. It shouldn't be just until their lawless action ceases. That is what they always do. We need to full stop in funding to ICE. This is weak messaging. We can't have more Democrats saying this across the country. We recognize that ICE is a terror institution. It needs to be abolished. Maine is not the only state that's seeing changes to immigration policy. Border czar Tom Homan has said that a new strategy will lead to a drawdown of federal agents in Minneapolis. Homan said the withdrawal of federal agents is dependent upon cooperation. Saying massive changes are coming to Minneapolis, President Donald Trump's border czar Tom Homan announced on Thursday that he has reached an agreement with local and state officials that will eventually draw down the number of federal agents in the city. Homan, who Trump sent to Minneapolis on Monday to find the solution to boiling tensions that have emerged in the wake of the fatal shooting by federal agents of Alex Pretti and Renee Good, said that immigration enforcement operations are going to be focused on targeting people who are threats to safety in the community. We will conduct targeted enforcement operations, targeted, what we've done for decades, Homan said. When we hit the streets, we know exactly who we're looking for, have a good idea of where we may find them. Homan said that he and State Attorney General Keith Ellison reached a breakthrough when Ellison clarified that county jails may notify U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials in advance of criminal public safety risks being released so ICE agents can take them into custody. We didn't agree on everything. I didn't expect to agree on everything, Homan said. I've heard many people want to know why we're talking to people who don't consider friends of the administration. Bottom line is, you can't fix problems if you don't have discussions. In a statement to ABC News on Thursday, Ellison said he did not make any agreements with Homan during their meeting. I did not negotiate with Mr. Homan, come to any agreement, or offer any compromise on the goal of keeping Minnesotans safe, Ellison said. Ellison said he outlined relevant Minnesota law to Homan and made clear that Minnesota will continue to follow the law. I also reiterated that in Minnesota, it is against the law to hold an incarcerated person solely on an ICE detainer if there is no other legal reason to hold them. I shared with him the existing state law that requires state and local authorities to share information with federal immigration authorities regarding non-citizens convicted of felonies, Ellison said. I also explained that county sheriffs, not the attorney general, run county jails and are also covered by the same law. Ellison added, I did not make and could not have made any agreement with him about how sheriffs share with ICE information about people in their county jails. Holman said that the police chiefs he has spoken to in recent days have committed to responding to 911 calls when protesters turn violent, agents are in dangerous situations, and there is assault. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said during a speech to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. on Thursday that he is absolutely hopeful federal forces would start to leave Minneapolis. We've had good, productive meetings with both President Trump as well as Border Czar Homan, and what I will say is I believe we will see it, Frey said. They have talked about drawing down numbers in terms of federal agents, ICE, and Border Patrol in Minneapolis, and that's essential. Don't know why he's so hopeful. I mean, the Trump administration has continued to go back on their word. So I don't know if we really do have a lot of optimism for that type of change. That is why it's so important that people get into the street because negotiations with elected officials have yielded the same results. A lot of times it's just delays, it's not full halts, and there's no real power or leverage that's being applied. But when we do it, the people, the working class of this country, that actually enables all industries and institutions to be successful, we have that power to use our leverage properly. And we need to continue to do that. Keith Ellison already explained there's not negotiations that are happening. He explained what state law looks like. Federal officers and local law enforcement have always notified ICE if there are convicted felons that are being released from jails. That's not something new. But for Tom Homan to act like that's a concession shows how this administration is trying to posture in any of these conversations. It is never about understanding the motivations of both agencies and coming to a compromise. It is always about how can we posture ourselves as the ones that are leading these negotiations and demanding change from local law enforcement. This is a complete infringement of state rights and state law, and we cannot continue to allow a federal government to act unchecked, which is why the people need to get out into the street, going back to the general strike that needs to happen today in multiple cities across the country. All of this is happening while Congress is trying to avoid a potential shutdown. Trump and Schumer moved towards possible deal to avert a shutdown. The president and top Senate Democrat were discussing an agreement to split off Homeland Security funding from a broader spending package and negotiate new limits on immigration agents. Here is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer talking about these negotiations.
We want masks off, body cameras on. They also always have to carry proper identification. These are common sense reforms, ones that Americans know and expect from law enforcement. What we want to do is negotiate with the Republicans and come up with a proposal that, again, reins in ICE and ends the violence.
A government shutdown is not in anybody's interest. It would affect funding for some really important agencies of government that the American people rely on, like FEMA, particularly at a time when we've got a lot of weather-related disasters making their way across the country. So I hope we can get this thing back on track.
I'm going to be completely transparent. This messaging is bullshit from Chuck Schumer. We need more than just ICE body cams on and identification. We need direct reforms. And if he can't do that, I understand that you need the amount of numbers in Congress to actually get legislation put forward. We should have congressional members, senators helping with mobilizing their own constituents. Economic strikes are one of the most effective ways that we can demand change as the people ourselves. It doesn't matter what the majorities look like in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. If we take to the streets, if we stop our economic productivity, that is where it's going to hurt them, where it hurts the most. Instead of forcing these reforms, Senate Democrats have kicked the can down the road, issuing a 2 week stopgap for DHS funding. This doesn't have any genuine reforms to the type of conduct that ICE is doing across the country. It just pushes the conversation later down the line. Democratic leaders are saying that this is to preserve leverage, but kicking the can down the road does nothing to do that. People remember what happened last year. After the 2025 shutdown, Democrats reopened the government without securing ACA subsidy extensions, trusting that Republicans eventually would follow later. They'll have to give in because it's such bad policy. Why wouldn't the Republicans agree with us? Republicans don't do that. They don't make concessions. Protections last. And now GOP senators like Lindsey Graham are already warning that any DHS deal must include crackdowns on sanctuary cities. This is not a negotiation. This is just a delay. We need more leadership from Democrats. I recognize if they don't have the numbers to institute policy or legislation, but they should be in their own communities, mobilizing people, organizing them, communicating with them. Republicans are killing civilians and are comfortable with that. We need more of that energy in communities itself, not just on CNN or Fox News, within those communities, starting mass mobilization. This national strike is a test for whether mass mobilization and economic pressure forces accountability when all other institutions fail. The fact that this is happening in nearly every state tells you that people recognize waiting around quietly is not an option anymore, and they're willing to shut down the country to prove that.